Welcome to this edition of the Bigger Game, from surviving to thriving, with our guest today, John Mashni, attorney at law, author, professor. John, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Great to be here. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for your time today. I know you're a busy guy with all the things you do, so I appreciate you taking a minute. Um,
My
you know,
pleasure.
it's a lot of things that you've experienced, and there's some nuggets that I think we'd all love to learn from. So I'm glad you're taking a few minutes with us, and I'm glad you're willing to share your some of your wisdom and some of your life experiences to kind of add to add to our own lives. So thanks for that.
I love it. Yeah, it's great to
Um,
be here. Great to be here.
yeah, excellent. So the bigger game for me is right playing the long game. It's not stepping on somebody in the short term to get a short term win and then deal with the repercussions of that and how I feel about it, my experience of how it weighs on me over time. And do it over and over again, and pretty much just dragging right day to day. Um, so thriving because I took the longer game, and I was true to myself and lived that way, right? What does a bigger game mean to you?
Well, I think to start with, I love your definition. I love the idea of not thinking short term, right? Not necessarily thinking it's just about you. I love that. I think for me, it means a couple things. Number one, it's not just about me. It's not just about what I want or my own success. It's success exists outside of me. Doesn't mean I can't be happy, right? If don't get what I want, but I think it means that my intention, my aim is at a purpose that is more than just benefiting me in my life, right? Other people are important. People are people. I always think in my brain, I love the phrase treat people like people, not like objects. So number one, I think it means that my purpose and my life is about more than myself. Number two, I love the idea that you just kind of hit on, right? To me, which I hear it as it's got to be a win-win. Other it can't be win-lose. So if I'm doing something and I'm trying to work with someone, whether it's someone that's working with me, someone that is a client, someone that we're working on a project together, we're at an event together. It's not just about what I get out of the event or the project or the relationship. It's about what they get as well. And are they getting what they want? Because I think that's where those are my favorite type of people. Are so consumed with certainly benefiting. Otherwise, they wouldn't be present in the relationship or the event. But they're also really in tuned to what's important to me? And there's like, hey, how could I help John? And that's beautiful. And I try to be that way. And I think one thing that happened to me actually last week, someone was like, hey, I'm excited to work for you. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna work for you. I'm very excited about it." And I said, "Let's start this relationship the way I want to start it, which is this. You don't work for me. Like you're not like a slave, right? Like we work together. We work with each other, not for each other." And I think that's like to me a summary of, or maybe an example of how I think of it. Like it's not about me or the company, right? It's about what we can do together. And that's what I think is like the bigger game to me is when I realize it's not about me, even in a family setting, right? It's not about me and getting only what I want, right? Certainly our needs are important, but it's not only about those things. That's what I love. Love the idea of maybe the bigger game.
That's fabulous. So when you are living the bigger game yourself, and it seems like you strive to do that at every juncture that you can, what's your experience of yourself versus when you're not?
Uh yeah, I think that that's how that's the only way that I know to develop a relationship that isn't short term, that isn't transactional. I think
Yeah.
I love it because when you think that way, you act that way, people understand pretty quickly. People are pretty smart, right? People are pretty perceptive. They recognize very quickly if a relationship is only one way, and they don't stay in them very long. And as soon as they figure it out, they realize, "Oh, wow, this is not about us. It's about this other person." whatever it might be. It could be in a friendship, it could be in a business relationship, it could be in a professional relationship. And I think that people realize it very quickly. And what I think is amazing to me, why I love it, is that you develop what I would call genuine, authentic relationships. Like life to me is that's what life's about. I heard a great line. It's actually from an old Chinese book, but one of the characters says, "Anything you can buy with money is worthless." And I that quote really challenges me, right? Anything you can buy with money is worthless. And a lot of times I've said that, and people have a problem with it. Like, well, wait, what about this? What about that? And I think it's meant to challenge you, right? To say, hey, if I can write a check for something, how much value does it actually have when compared with the things that I can't write a check for, that I can't pay for, that I can't buy with money? And I think that speaks to relationships, with how we make people feel, whether people trust us, whether people want to be with us, right? It's a very different relationship if you just are in the relationship because you know, hey, I'm just getting a paycheck, or I'm just doing this because I have to take care of my family or something else in a business, right? But if you, even if there's money involved, you might say, I love this relationship. Like, I can't wait. Like that's incredible. That's an amazing feeling. Even if it's not even in a business context, social context, family context, personal context, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think taking it one step further, when I look at like, on my deathbed, everything I wrote a check for, am I going to remember? I think it's everything that I didn't write a check for that I'm going to remember. I think,
Amen.
at
Yes,
least
absolutely.
in my experience, that's what I think about. Right. So I think that's priceless. Anything I can write a
Yeah.
check for is worthless. And living
Yeah.
that way is a whole different dimension. So when you live that way, what's your experience of yourself?
Well, I think to me, I feel like when I'm living that way, I'm being authentic to who I am. And I'm also
Yeah.
recognizing like the authenticity of other people. I'm looking at them like back to what I said earlier, treat people like people. When I act and think this way, I'm looking at somebody else and saying, this is not my path to getting what I want. They're not an object of that gets me closer to what I want to achieve or what I want to do. No, this is a person who has dreams, desires, fears, um, the craziness of life, just like I have the craziness of life with a family, with parents, with siblings, with clients, with professional relationships, with money stresses and job stresses and time stresses and health stresses. Just like I have, they have all those same things. And now we're going to communicate, and I'm going to be open and authentic about who I am with the expectation that they're going to be open and authentic about who they are. And together, we're going to say, we're going to lay out what it looks like where we both get what we want. And we're both going to be open about that. And I'll just say this, Abizer, when you have that attitude and you bring it and you're truly being open and authentic, it's incredible. Like I think it's incredible. And I think that's how I think even in my own life when I've had to do very hard things, like just in as a lawyer, certainly. I've worked as a manager, right? I've had to terminate people's employment. There's like some cases I really closely remember where I was forced to terminate the employment of some people, and I really like these people, and I didn't agree with the decision, but I just had to do it. But I felt like I did it in a way that I treated them like people. It was not. Oh, it was like, hey, it's all done, and just kind of emotionless. And I did it in a way where I felt proud of how I handled myself, and I was very empathetic, and I did it in a way where I maintained a friendship. And years later, those people, they actually hired me as an attorney. This is before I even went to law school. But because of how the relationship professionally ended, they respected it so much that they said, John, we want you to work with us. And they had actually developed some pretty cool businesses. Like this was not like a very small client. These were people who had gone on to achieve and done some really cool things. And so and they just respected, and they told me this after the fact, that they respected how I acted and how I treated them. And in that very tough situation. And that's
So
why I
it's
think,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, go
So it's
ahead.
about love, care, compassion, you know, treating people from there, like, and that's, John, that to me, authentically, that's who you are, right? Love, care, compassion on the planet, and living true to yourself that way, that authenticity you talked about, right? Living that way and treating people that way, regardless of the situation. You got to fire somebody, terminate somebody. It's a difficult, challenging, whatever might be
Yeah.
going on, right? To the point that that situation took place, and then they reached back out to you later. Think about the
Yeah.
love, care, and compassion present in that you generated, you created in that conversation, that they were left with that years later and remembered that. They didn't remember the firing so much or whatever happened, right?
Yeah.
They remembered who you were being in the conversation, the bigger
That's right.
game. Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
fantastic.
It reminds me too, Abizer, if I can just share one more story that I think is a little
Yeah.
bit different context, but I think it's this very similar idea. And I heard a great um, story about a screenwriter, and he was sharing kind of secrets of the screenwriting trade. I went to film school too, so I just love anything storytelling. I'm all about it, right? I love stories, love the creativity and being in the arts, being an artist. So I was listening to this screenwriter talk, and this is back when I was actually writing screenplays. And I was trying to write and whatever, trying to be filmmaker, right? Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino were my heroes at the time. This is like late '90s, early 2000s, 20 plus years ago. And the screenwriter was given this example of he was saying how to pitch a movie to an executive or to somebody at studio, right? Somebody with money that could make your movie. He's like how to pitch a movie. It was so cool. It was just is this great explanation of how to pitch a movie, which I won't get into unless you want to. But here's what he said. He said, don't worry whether they like your pitch or not. He's like, the goal is not to get them to like your pitch. The goal is to make a fan. Because you might be pitching a western and they might say, "No, we're doing romantic comedies. Sorry, we're looking for a romantic comedy. Do you have a romantic comedy?" And it's like if they like how you pitch them, whatever you're pitching, if they are not if they see through the pitch and see you and they like you, they become a fan of you, then they're going to think of you when something else comes along, even if they can't say yes right at that moment. Something else comes along and they're going to want to talk to you because you made a fan, because they liked you. And that always stuck with me because I wrote a whole article about this, make a fan. Like I don't have my goal when I talk to a new client is not to get a client. It's to make a fan. Hey, can I help them? Beezer, you come to me and you say, "Hey, I got this problem with let's say personal injury, right? I got this issue." And I say, "Hey, Beezer, hey, I can't help you with that. I'm not a personal injury lawyer." But what if I gave you like the name of three people who I trusted and I said, "Talk to one of these three. I trust them." Wouldn't you be like, "Wow, that's so cool. Like, thank you." Like I didn't know who to talk to, assuming you didn't know who to talk to, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, that's making a fan, right? That's
Yeah.
making a
Yeah, it's
fan.
like people do business with people they like. Not so
Yeah.
much what you're pitching, it's be likable, it's may turn them into a fan of yours.
Yeah.
The other way we sometimes we hear it is, you know, people like themselves in your presence. I forget how it's said exactly,
Joe
but
Caruso,
you're
right,
right,
yeah, do they like
right.
themselves more when they spend time with you? They like themselves
Yeah,
more when they spend time with you. I love that line. It's
right.
exactly right. It's exactly right because when you give, people think I'm worthy of being given to. Like it boosts their self-esteem, it boosts their view of themselves, right? Of
Yeah,
course. Right? It doesn't mean that we do it in a harmful way where we just give so much that we can't, that we sacrifice or we harm ourselves. But what it means is like we give first. I mean, that to me is again, and I think there's lots of people in this world that will not resonate with because they're out to get it for themselves. They do have a selfish streak. They are focused on what's in it for them and not what's in it for the other person. But here's what I've learned when you have this attitude, make a fan or give first or something like that, it's actually the best filter to find other people that think like what we're talking about right here. Because if you
yeah,
give or you try to make a fan and you don't make a fan, let's say they don't like you or they reject what you're trying to give, they reject this kind of help first or give first attitude. you can figure that out very quickly because they just act entitled. They act like that you should give 1,000, 10 times or twice as much or three times as much. And there's an entitlement, right? There's a selfishness to it. And if you notice that right away, or even a little bit down the line, it's like a great way to filter out people who aren't going that who don't want, let's phrase it in your terminology, who don't want to play that bigger game with you.
Yeah, wow, look at that. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, you shared kind of from the legal perspective, you shared from the producer perspective. Do you have something like this from the author perspective as well?
Well, I think, I've learned so many lessons trying to tell stories. And I love telling stories. I produce movies too with the group. I just got cast in a bigger role in an upcoming movie, so that's kind of fun. I used to perform and went to film school like I mentioned. And in the stories that I tell now, I write children's
Well, hang
books.
on, before you go there, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you give us a little
Yeah.
background on stories you do write? You're an author. Maybe take a little minute and tell us about
Sure.
the
Yeah,
fun stuff you
sure.
write about.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I mentioned I went to film school. I've actually written a few screenplays many, many years ago. And I was actually, after I graduated law school, I felt this desire to start writing again. And so I started writing articles online. You can find them on my website, johnmashni.com. And then I got to a point where I was writing a nonfiction book. And that book, which I still love, which I may finish someday, who knows, right? But I just my law practice was so busy at the time and life was crazy and had young kids, still have 4 kids, so it's crazy still. But I really kind of had a friend close to me say, "John, you need to write something else because you're not going to finish this book of yours until you're like 65, right? So it's just never going to happen." And I said, "You're probably right." And what ended up happening was my kids started telling this same friend of mine who's given me this advice about these bedtime stories. I would just tell the kids just to have fun with my own kids. And he said, "John, you got to start turning these bedtime stories into children's books. I think you should just start writing children's books, just capturing these books, these ideas. They're funny. They're making me laugh." And I was very embarrassed initially. I was very embarrassed because they're silly. Like all the stories I would tell my kids, I'm just trying to make my own kids laugh. That's all I was trying to do. I thought that they would never leave my house. I thought it would just stay in the house and it would just be something my kids liked and then they would forget about it. And no, my friend basically said, "No, you got to publish this and put this nonfiction book, on hold, and then start writing these children's books." And I just thought he was so crazy. I was a lawyer. I worked at a big law firm. I thought my firm would fire me. I thought my clients would fire me. I thought my friends would think I just was like that was not in line with the image of myself as this lawyer, right? Business lawyer making deals and helping people with buy businesses, sell businesses, secure intellectual property. I'm like dealing with bigger and bigger dollar amounts and now I'm going to go write a children's book. And Abizer, I know you know this, but the first book that everyone thought I should start with was this embarrassing story of Cinderella, except when the clock strikes midnight, she is leaving the ball, she's leaving the prince's palace, and she loses her slipper, right? And she bends over, she picks up the slipper, but she passes gas, she toots, and then the prince doesn't have her slipper to find his true love. He has the smell of her toot. And I always say the prince has to go around the kingdom asking all the maidens to pass gas and find the smell of his true love, and it's called Cinder Tube. That was the story that my kids loved. I told to them like 100 days in a row. All they wanted to hear was Cinder Tube over and over, and had like all these different versions and different characters and things, and they just loved it, and it made my kids laugh, and it was beautiful, and I just bonded with my kids over this story. I never thought I would have to explain this to clients, never, right? Or my law firm. I just thought never. I was just this is just being silly with kids. But what ended up happening was I wrote these stories, that story particularly, and then we wrote 3 others, and we've actually got 4 more that are in production.
Exciting.
And yeah, and it just ended up being something I could do with my kids. And you talk about the bigger game. I think certainly, yeah, we'd love to sell as many books as we can, but these are books that I have written with my kids, actually with my wife, and she's very funny. She adds some great humor to all the stories. But we do it together as a family. And we don't just write the books together, we market the books together. There's a great video of my kids interviewing me. It's on YouTube. It's hilarious. My daughters would not tell me the interview questions in advance. My son shot the video, and they're just asking me these hilarious questions, like grilling me, as the author of, all these silly children's books. So we do it as a family, and even the money that comes in, we split it. I made the kids pick charities that we give money to, and so it's just this amazing project that we work on together. And to me, that's the bigger game, right? It's not about, hey, just do it to make money. It's like, yeah, if we were doing something to make money, I probably would not do children's books. Okay. But my kids are always going to remember doing this together. The first time my daughter, Ella, saw her name in the acknowledgments of the book, we got this package of books in our kitchen. We opened up the box, and Ella lifts. She opens up the cover, and she sees to Maxwell, Ella, Esme, and Gemma, who heard this story 100 times before anyone else. She saw her own name, Ella, in the acknowledgments, and like her face just literally. I think there was like light coming from every direction. I mean, just like complete beaming, right? This little girl. And of course, Cinderella, I took the position that, Cinderella's name is actually Ella. It's just Cinderella is the name that is like kind of what people call her to make fun of her. So she's called Ella the whole story, and that's my daughter's name. And I loved it. But to see my daughter every time I went to their classes, read the books, and every time I read it, she just gets this smile like Ella does, and the other kids are in the other books too. So it's just this amazing experience. And thanks for letting me share it, but it makes me smile even talking about it. But it's just this incredible experience with the kids. And that's something I'll tell you, money cannot buy that kind of stuff. That's
Yeah,
really cool
and
experience.
the key to all of that was, you know, not living by society norms. How many times do I spend my life thinking, am I normal? Am I not normal? And that normalness is something that I made up, that I think society holds as normal, or that society
Yeah,
holds as normal, and now I'm continuously judging myself and analyzing myself as to whether I'm holding that normal or not. Like you just talked about, like I'm a lawyer doing this and that and the other thing. Here I'm writing children's books. How's that going to go over? I mean, you obviously went through the entire thing, and I think that was a great share. I mean, I was look at my own life and not do something because it's outside the norm, right?
yeah,
However, it's my life. So if I don't, I
yeah.
like you,
That's right.
they talk about authenticity, right? If I'm not authentic to who I am, and going back to what you said before, if I can write a check for it, it's worthless. So
Yeah,
these are the things you don't remember. It's not about the money that was created, and even the money that was created was given to charity or is being given to charity at some level, right?
yeah,
I mean, the kid's gonna remember. You're gonna remember on your deathbed all her face beaming from left to right and the glow, right? She's gonna take that on with her, and hopefully generations to come will know Grandpa John, right? All these books that he wrote and whatever else came out of it, right? I mean, that's a
yeah.
fantastic share.
What I'd say too, even to add to it, I think to talk the whole I love this theme of the bigger game, right? Because I think I had a conversation with my kids and I said, guys, we were talking about, I asked the kids, how much should we charge? Because I was trying to teach the kids about entrepreneurship, how to be business owners, how to be creative, how to execute. I said, guys, how much should we charge for each book? What should we charge? And we said, well, how much do other books cost? My kids are pretty smart about it. They were like, oh, I was like, so let's go look what other books cost that we like. And I said, okay, that's a good way to do it. So what are we selling though? I wanted to really have this conversation. What are we selling? And they're like, Jared, we sell books. And I said, are you sure? Is that what we're selling? Because books, it's just a piece of paper, right? We could sell a book for pretty inexpensively, right? What's the cost to print a book? So I said, well, what are we actually selling though? Why would we charge more than what it costs to print? Why would we charge more than that? And then we went back and forth, and I said, let me propose something to you. We are not selling books because it's hard for me to get excited about selling a book. It is. It's just, I don't make very much per book. Okay. But I said, what if we go back to the original story? One of the very first people to read the book before there were any illustrations for Cindertude, I sent it to the guy who told me to write the book. He's got 5 kids. And he said, I'll read it. I'll read it to my kids and I'll give you some feedback. And this was the first person outside my family to read it. Okay. And I was waiting. Like I was so like anxious, like, oh my gosh, is he gonna say I hated it? What's he gonna say? And I get this email from him. And it's one of the best emails I've ever received in my life. He said, "What?" It's just basically like, "What?" And then it goes, "I just read Sender Toot to the kids. We could not stop laughing." And here's what he said that I wanted to share. "Thank you for giving me 30 minutes of laughter with my kids." So then I shared that story with my kids and I said, "What do we sell? Are we selling books? We're selling about 30 minutes of joy with a child." And I like to say sometimes the child's optional, right? That's what we sell. And I said, think about that next time we're doing marketing, next time we're coming up with the idea for a book, next time we're hiring an illustrator, next time we're doing anything with the books. What are we selling? We're selling about 30 minutes of joy. And what would someone pay for 30 minutes of joy? And that to me is playing the bigger game. We're not selling books. Look, yeah, of course, we are actually selling a product, a book, right? You got to order something. Of course. But mentally, psychologically, when we're thinking about this whole process, yeah, the book is the small game. The bigger game is when I'll just say this, Abizer, don't you think there's a lot of pain and sadness in this world? I mean, like, I think as your parents get older, it's hard to see people get older. As you get older, it's hard to get older. Your health, you got money, stress, financial issues, professional issues, things happen where you have relationships that seem great and then maybe they're not, and then sometimes they're not, and then it gets a little bit better, but you never know. People have stresses everywhere. And now we're going to come in and we're going to say our purpose, the why we exist, the bigger game that we're playing is all these people that we know are hurting, that we're going to look at them as people and not just objects to sell something to. How much is it worth it for them to laugh for a few minutes, for 30
Mm.
minutes with a child? Like, that's something to me that is the bigger game that I could dedicate a lot of my life and energy to. And
I
that's what
think that's a
does
I
that make
think
sense?
100%. I think that makes that when you look at it from the well, there's so many different perspectives here. There's the time with the family, right? There's the bonding with your
Yep.
kids. Your wife is involved with her humor, right? All of it. And if we step outside of that from it and look at it from a business context, right? The bigger game that you just talk about at the end here, right? Like, what am I actually selling? You're selling joy, right?
That's right.
You're really just selling joy. Like,
That's
you
right.
look at Starbucks, they're not selling coffee. They're selling the experience, right? You're
Yeah,
selling joy. I think
that's
I
right.
think that's fantastic. And how many people can walk around the planet and say, I'm selling joy, right? The Mashni family can say that. That's fantastic. I
And
love that.
here's what I know too, it's not for everybody. Like, so, sometimes I post online or I have different ads on Facebook and Instagram, and some people love it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, can't wait to read this." Other people, it's hilarious. Abizer, I should take some screenshots and show people. They're like, "I can't believe you're laughing about this crude humor is what's wrong with our country and our world." Right? I mean, it's just amazing, this dichotomy. But you know what? That's why I go back to remember what I said earlier. I think it's so true. This, when we give first and we come into it looking at it like people and trying to have a win win, you give first, it's a filter, right? It doesn't mean everybody's going to want to play the same game as you. And that's what's beautiful, right? I get it. I love it. I intentionally am trying to have this reaction because what I know is that's how I'll find the people who will experience that joy. I'll find those people much faster.
And it's not personal,
No, yeah,
right?
exactly.
The most beautiful thing
Exactly.
is not how many times do I take it personally, right? I put my
Yeah.
heart into this book, I put my heart into this thing and that thing and this widget, and someone just stepped all over it, right? boy, woe is
Yeah.
me, right? However, it's not personal. It's just
Yeah.
like you said, it's separating uh, the people that are interested from the people that are not interested. It's the people
That's
that
exactly
get the
right.
bigger game, people that don't get the bigger game, in whatever context you're looking at, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
it's a great way of filtering out, whatever you're trying to find, right? So,
That's exactly right.
and it keeps the personal nature of it out of it because it's not really personal anyway until I choose it or I make it about that, right? And I don't need to make it about that. I don't need to
Yeah.
make it about society norms. I don't need to make it about anything personal to me. It's just a funny thing to laugh at, and maybe some people will laugh, some people won't. It's a beautiful thing either way, right? I
Yeah.
love that. Is there anything you want to leave us with? Any closing thoughts or anything else you want to share that we haven't covered yet?
Well, I have 2 kind of thoughts and they're related. Number 1, I think for me, I think one of the things I lost track of in the last few years is being authentic to who I am. And I've really tried to get back to that. And sometimes I even find myself asking myself, "Hey, what would John do? Like the John that I love. Like what would I do? Right? What would John do?" And it reminds me of this quote that I wrote down many, many years ago. And I don't even know where I found it. I cannot find where I found this quote. I've Googled it. I have no idea. I just wrote it down because I heard it and I loved it. And the quote deals with what we're talking about. And it's something like this. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it goes like this: the secret to life is finding the kid that, the secret to life is finding the things that made you weird as a kid and learning how to make money from them when you're older. And
Love it.
I think it's I'm trying to think. David Swim to Kansas Freeman. He apparently was I credited as like a screenwriter somewhere. And I literally cannot find this person or the quote anywhere. So I have no idea if this person exists or if he actually said it or what. But I just love that quote so much because I think that a lot of times the bigger game is avoiding or trying to play something that's bigger than just getting through today or tomorrow, right? Or just getting like because it's like getting out of survival mode and into a mode where we can think about, hey, what am I would me as a little kid be excited to find out who I am right now? Like that's a fun question sometimes to ask yourself, right? And to me, that's the bigger game. And maybe we couldn't even have dreamed of it. Maybe it's like, oh wow. But if we're not happy with that, then I think that's where it's like, hey, are we playing even the right game?
Wow. Yeah, are we playing even the right game? That's fantastic. What else?
What do you think? Yeah. Well, what else? I think,
You said there were
to
two
me,
things. That's the first thing, right? So what's the
yeah,
second thing?
yeah. I think just going back to authenticity, right? Is oh, hold on one second here. They're getting interrupted. So I'll just finish this thought. Being being authentic is super important to me. And I lost track of it. I lost track of it. And I think that to me, it's being created. I think it's important to think about that there is like an authentic person, authentic self that I have, and I was created to be a certain way. And there's certain things that energize me, and there's also certain things that drain me, and it's personal and individual to me. That there's a unique part of me, but also that there's I'm a different person when I'm being authentic. A great version, the best version of me. And you could say that it's yeah, I'm the person that I would love to be as a kid. Um, but it's also the person that, I think about sometimes like, what do I have to do? Who do I have to be if at the end of my life I would say I don't have any regrets? Because I think that sometimes people say no regrets, right? But I actually think like I do think there's things I regret. Like I look back rightly or wrongly and say, yeah, I wish I handled that differently. It would have been good, right? Because you just never know. Life is short, right? I have some people who are maybe I wish I would have said certain things and they're no longer alive, right? And it's just a wish I got a chance to say goodbye or to reach out sooner or to do something. And so I think that for me, I think really deeply about, hey, like, what do I need to do so that I don't have or minimize those regrets at the end of my life? And that's to me is being authentic to who I am.
Yeah, I think that that's a great takeaway, right? The authenticity part and the not living like we have all kinds of time in the world, right? We're all just waiting in line. We don't know when our number is, right? And
Yeah.
so cleaning those things up immediately is
Yeah.
perhaps the ultimate, perhaps one of the highest ways of playing the bigger game is
Yeah.
taking care of it now rather than getting stuck on, well, they're gonna call me first, or who knows where I end up in some of those sometimes
Yes.
those conversations, right? So being the first one to call, playing the bigger game and beating the person to the phone call. Like I'm gonna call them first before they call me, right?
That's a great
Um,
example. Yeah. That's a
Playing
great
the
example.
bigger game. Like we're just in line with what you were talking about. They're no longer here. Now what do I do? Right? So I think that that's huge. I think we'll leave it with that. That's a fantastic thought to end this with. John, is there any way, anything you want to tell us about how we can reach out to you if you want to have more questions and want to
Yeah.
talk to you about your
Yeah.
law practice? What law do you practice in short?
Business, tax, and intellectual property, and some
This,
entertainment too. So transactional lawyer. Yeah. Generally work with entrepreneurs and business owners for the most part. Um,
excellent.
and
Yeah, how do we reach you?
Yeah, so a couple different ways, johnmashni.com, JOHNMASHNI.com, or rendios.com. That's the law firm website. And very easy to get a hold of me. Just find me on LinkedIn, or online. Johnmashni.com is a great way.
And there you are. Thanks for joining us today on this episode of The Bigger Game.
Yeah, thanks, Abizer.